it's really important to try limiting alcohol for 6 to 8 weeks, just so you can see what your baseline is like without that medication. See what difference it makes in your mood, in your sleep, in your resilience, in your flexibility, in your desire to do things, in the pleasure you take out of things. Hello, this is Dr. Wells with Wells Medicine, and I wanted to talk about one of my least favorite subjects today, alcohol. It is in the class of medications that are sedative depressants, and it is just a poison for the whole body. There are so many social reasons that people accept alcohol right now in 2025, but that doesn't mean that it's good for us. One of the arguments that I hear over and over again is that my cardiologist wants me to have alcohol for cardiovascular protection. This was a very old study, and it was actually done with 1/4 cup of dark red wine once a day. And they found a very limited benefit in men with 1/4 cup of dark red wine. They didn't find any benefit in women, and they didn't find any benefit with more than 1/4 cup. So I really do want to encourage people, if you're a man and you want to drink 1/4 cup of dark red wine, there may be a small cardiovascular benefit that you could probably get from taking 8 dark red grapes or a resveratrol pill without the alcohol effects on depression, on mood, and for everyone else that isn't a man or that isn't going to drink 1/4 cup, there are no positive benefits to alcohol. I can't state that enough. Whether it's beer, wine, spirits, whether you're drinking once a week with friends, whether you're drinking every night, there are just no positive health benefits. Your liver certainly doesn't benefit. It can develop cirrhosis, fibrosis. Your pancreas doesn't have any benefits, as alcohol is a huge amount of sugar and high glycemic, and so you can develop diabetes. People develop alcoholic cardiomyopathy, which means that their heart fails because of alcohol. Certainly there are a number of car accidents and people in jail because of alcohol. And even beyond that, it ages your skin. It causes early dementia. And really, for my purposes, it's horrible for people's moods. I can't tell you how many times I've seen patients whose depression or anxiety was fixed, not just because of the ketamine, not just because of the TMS, but because I was able to finally convince them to give up any alcohol. Over and over again, I will talk about studies with patients and alcohol, and I can see in their eyes that patients will think, well, that's not me. I'm not part of that study population, or they didn't study me, or they don't know my tolerance, or my family background must be different, or the way that I drink must be different. But when you're wearing a wearable that keeps track of your vital signs, the Oura Ring, the Whoop Band, the Fitbit, the Apple Watch. I don't want to leave out any wearables here. We're not sponsored by any, but one of the best things that I can say about wearables is it really allows you to see the data for yourself. You really can see the difference in heart rate variation over the next 3 days. You really can see the difference in the amount of deep and REM sleep over the next 3 days. The Oura Ring in particular will often chirp out to patients, your body's under stress, you can't exercise, you need an extra day of recovery, even after just 1 or 2 drinks. So I really do want to encourage, if you don't think that this data applies to you, try wearing a wearable and see the results of 1 or 2 drinks on the next 2 to 3 days. Your sleep, your resilience, your flexibility of thought, your motivation, your desire to do things. In medical parlance, we call that anhedonia, just a lack of pleasure in things. And it definitely is related to 1 or 2 drinks. All the time, patients will tell me, well, I just didn't feel like going for a walk. I just didn't feel like going to work. I didn't feel like doing things. And that lack of motivation is very common in depression, but it's also very common with an alcoholic drink over the last 2 or 3 days. And if you're drinking on Monday and Wednesday and Sunday, that basically covers the whole week. And then you don't get a chance to see what your motivation, your pleasure, your sleep is like without alcohol. One of the other things that's very interesting about alcohol is alcohol, because of the way it works in your body on the brain, is what's called a GABA agonist. So there are receptors in the brain called the GABA receptors. And you may have heard us talk about these before in the benzodiazepine lecture. But benzodiazepines, Xanax, Valium, Ativan, those are GABA agonists as well. And alcohol, being a GABA agonist, means that it promotes the GABA receptors activity. And what happens when you push on that GABA receptor is that you can develop tolerance and rebound very, very quickly. So after that alcoholic beverage and the pressure on the GABA receptor wear off at the end of that metabolism of the alcohol, what you can develop is rebound anxiety. So if you were drinking to help with anxiety, now you're developing rebound anxiety until those GABA receptors reset, which again can be 2 or 3 days after any drink. So I can't emphasize enough. If I can convince people to stay away from alcohol for 6 to 8 weeks, the majority of patients see such a huge difference in their mood that they limit alcohol to very, very rare events. Ongoing basis, versus the way that they were drinking before they came to see me. So usually I'll have to remind people after vacations and sometimes after big sporting events. But it's really important to try limiting alcohol for 6 to 8 weeks, just so you can see what your baseline is like without that medication. A lot of people will say, well, I'll just have one. But unlike one Dorito or one donut, after one alcoholic beverage, it's really easy to forget that you said you'd have one. And it's really easy to forget that you've already had one and to have another. So even more so than donuts and Doritos, it's really easy to have too many if you've had one. So even though if I can do nothing else, I like to persuade people, if you're out at a bar, if you're watching a big game and you know you're going to be drinking, I highly encourage you to have one alcoholic beverage and then one non-alcoholic beverage if you must drink. But if I can convince you to give up drinking completely, one of the biggest arguments is that patients will say, well, but I don't want my friends to know that I'm not drinking, or I'd be too embarrassed to order a non-alcoholic drink because people might think that I was an alcoholic. The bartenders, the wait staff at restaurants, they don't care. They are not interested in why you are not drinking, whether you're Muslim or Mormon, or whether you're previously an alcoholic, or whether you had bad experiences with alcoholics in your family, or whether you're pregnant, or whether you're sympathizing with someone who's not drinking right now, or whether you want to close this business deal, or whether you're the designated driver. You can get a tonic water with a little slice of lime, You can get a fruit juice with a little maraschino cherry stuck in the top. There's so many ways to fake having an alcoholic beverage if that's your desire to kind of blend in with the crowd. And once your friends have had one or two, they're not going to know either. Or remember or care, and they may be super grateful that you would be the designated driver. So I really do want to encourage, as much as possible, everyone to just try and give up alcohol for 6 to 8 weeks. See what difference it makes in your mood, in your sleep, in your resilience, in your flexibility, in your desire to do things, in the pleasure you take out of things. And I really do want to encourage, if you are having struggles with drinking, there are some amazing apps and programs out there. The VA, the Veteran Affairs Hospital, has a free Healthy Changes app, which focuses on healthy drinking, not abstinence. And I do always want to give a shout out to Alcoholics Anonymous, which, even though it's a polarizing program because of its religious overtones, it is an amazing program that has amazing accountability, amazing cognitive behavioral therapy, amazing support structure. So there are some programs out there to help you if you realize that you have some unhealthy drinking habits. There are some online quizzes that you can take, or that you can talk with your family or friends to see if they've noticed any unhealthy patterns with alcohol. But I really do want to encourage everyone to kind of look at this and evaluate where they are, because I think that this, if this was something that was created today, I don't think we would make it legal and accessible and advertised and such an important part of our social structure. And I don't think we would consider it as fun and frivolous as people do now. So that's my little plug for being a teetotaler, because I think you would really be amazed at how much of a difference it would make in mental health, depression, anxiety, even PTSD and OCD. So sorry to be a drag, but that's my plea for today. Thank you so much, and have a good afternoon.